All right, let's see. So let's see, we have about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I see about 5 to 6 students in right now.
Excellent.
So, all right, so let's go ahead and get started. So good morning to all, well, actually, good afternoon to all of you. It's a pleasure to meet you guys. My name is Reginald Glenn. I serve as, well, I serve right now currently as the Coordinated Entry Systems Director for what's called the Mississippi Balance of State Continuum of Care. I'll quickly explain what that is in just a moment. But also, I've been someone who has helped to coordinate the point in time, which we're talking about today, over multiple years. Probably since about 2013 or 14, I've been a part of this effort for our continuum to do this. And so it's my pleasure today to train you. My hope is that as we go through, it'll have some very essential information. Feel free to ask questions. I'm going to try to go through most of the information I can, and then maybe at the end answer questions. But if there's just something really pressing that you feel like you just need to get in at the moment, please feel free to either raise your hand or just stop me and say, hey, Reggie, I have a question. And keep in mind that as you can see on the screen here, my email address is rglenn@msbos.org. So even if there's some pressing question you didn't want to ask online, but you still want to ask the inquiry, please feel free to reach out to me. So that was kind of an introduction for myself, but to describe really quickly what the balance of state is. The Mississippi Balance of State is a continuum, a network of agencies who are working together to solve one objective or one goal. And that goal is to functionally end homelessness. And so what that means is we want to make sure that homelessness in our particular region, which in this case would be, if you're looking at a map of Mississippi, if you pluck out the Jackson metro area and if you pluck out the 6 coastal counties, the balance of state is a network of agencies all in that in between. So that includes, of course, places like Hattiesburg, Meridian, Tupelo, all the way far as South Haven, back down to the Delta, places like Cleveland and Greenville, as well as in the southwest corner in Natchez. And so our job in today is to get you guys ready as volunteers for our point in time count. And so in today's presentation, we're going to go through a few things here. Again, this is being recorded. So even if you jump in late and you missed a point, remember, we'll have this recorded. So we'll be able to send that link out so that you can access it later and go through it. But today our training agenda is going to go as follows. We're going to talk PIT count 101, basically what is it and questions about it. We're going to look at your role as a volunteer and what it's going to take for you to actually do surveys. We're not going to necessarily do survey practice today. However, I am going to give surveying tips. And then we're going to look a quick look at the logistics at the end. And my hope is that hopefully one of our mainstays, one of our lead agencies there with Kathy Garner with ASC will be able to kind of jump in and help us with some of the logistics for the Hattiesburg area in your local count. So if there is nothing else, I'd like to go ahead and jump in. So let's go forward. So again, PIT count 101. The point in time count is a literal count of all people experiencing homelessness in our county, across our community. And so just to kind of give you some context, all across the nation, all networks of homeless agencies or all homeless continuum networks are charged in the last 10 days of January to count homeless people in their jurisdiction. Now, many agencies and many networks go about it various ways, but we choose to do what we call just try to do a physical head count. So we go out to see, physically, visually who is out and who meets that definition of homelessness within our continuum all across the state. We'll talk more about, although we're deep in February, we're in February as we do this. I do have some questions. I'll tell you more about why we are, but just know that in usual times, we usually do this count in the last 10 days of January, and we'll talk about why we do that. And again, this is a snapshot of homelessness not only for our region, but it's also used as a part of national reporting to the United States Congress and part of a big report, which we call, the short name is called the AHAR, but the long name is the Annual Homeless Assessment Report. So this is reported to Congress, and this helps us to essentially figure out who's homeless in our communities, how many, and how should funding be divvied to be able to serve those various purposes. Who's counting the count? It's two divisions of that. And in fact, I'll go to this next slide to make it really clear. Although there's two sides of homelessness, there's a side of homelessness, number one, that is unsheltered, which we're going to talk more about today. And then there's also sheltered, meaning there are people who are in emergency shelters or people who are in transitional housing for formerly homeless people, people who may be accessing hotel stays that are prompted by nonprofit agencies, and also in places called safe havens. Mississippi doesn't necessarily have a safe haven. There may be agencies with the name safe haven. However, the literal HUD definition of safe haven, we have none of those that exist in Mississippi. But so that's the shelter part. Well, then the unsheltered part is people that we're finding are people who are, and keep in mind, this is referring to a person's place of habitation, right? This is where this person sleeps at night. And keep in mind, that's either in sheltered indoors, or that's a place that's not sheltered. When we refer to it as a whole, we say places not meant for human habitation, and that includes cars, being in parks, abandoned buildings, if you're at the bus or train station sleeping on the bench, if you're at the airport or camping grounds, outside the context of simply camping for recreation, or living with your car parked in a parking lot, then that is what qualifies a person as meeting the definition of homelessness in regards to the HUD definition. Keep in mind, one of the things that you don't see on here are people who are doubled up. There may be a significant amount of people who may not have a place that they call their own. However, they sleep in the house of someone else. We consider that to be called doubled up. And you may know some people who are doubled up. However, in this particular count, we are not counting those people. And just so we're clear, for your part of the point in time count, the thing that we're focusing on is what's shaded in the pink here, and that's the unsheltered PIT. And so again, PIT stands for point in time. And this is a significant snapshot of people being counted in one particular time period, to give a snapshot on homelessness, on what the average of homeless could be across a community in a given time. Let's see, any questions about the definition before I move on? I see somebody's screen lit up, Tiffany. But if you're not mute, you may want to unmute yourself. Okay, well, I'll assume that you don't have any questions thus far. So again, just a quick reminder, here's why do we do the PIT count? We do it because we want to measure trends and changes in our homeless population in the national and local levels. Again, our count is not only counted for statewide and regional wide efforts, but it's also used as a part of national effort to make sure that there's a community understanding of what our homeless situation looks like, and to be able to petition for resources. Those resources are in correlation to how many homeless we have and what is the need of our community. And then lastly, we want to comply with federal regulations. HUD requires that it's really every odd year. However, we as a continuum choose to count every year, but we want to comply with federal regulations and requirements to be able to do a PIT count, because again, it moves towards national trends and data so that we can know how to better serve people in our region and our state. But then it's also used for to basically gauge population and funding. So that's why we count. So your volunteer efforts will lead directly into the measuring of data, the maintaining of funding, and complying with federal regulations. Why does the count take place in the last 10 days of January? Often a question that's asked. The long and short of the story is this. Usually the last 10 days of January is a chance to maximize resources. These are usually the coldest days on record. Of course, we live in Mississippi, and many of you guys will probably be, keep in mind that we didn't quite get cold weather until we were late into January, or deep into January. But usually, historically, these are our colder temperatures. All right. And so that's why we are required to count in the last 10 days of January. But also I like to mention that we try to count in the end because this is a chance to maximize the resource of when people, there may be people who may be in need, but it's more likely if we try to catch people at the beginning of the month, there may be benefits that maybe people may have gotten benefit checks, or people may have gotten some type of substance, and that usually happens early in the beginning of the month and in the middle. So we figured the last, or the end of the month is a great time to kind of leverage to see who is truly in need versus who isn't. So any other thoughts, questions? Anybody would like to ask a question there? All right. Now, again, keep in mind that as we're doing this presentation, we're doing it in close to mid-February. And here's the reason why we're doing that. We're going to do our count this year in late February because our continuum of care applied for an exception of the count because we want to basically implement protection measures as we've encountered COVID-19 numbers at highs. And so just so you're clear, our official count dates are February 22nd through 25th. So that'll be right after President's Day. And the reference date is February 22nd at midnight to the following, to 11:59 a.m. Basically into the next, to next midnight. So keep in mind that when you're out there and you're surveying people who may be homeless, you're not gonna even if, there'll be multiple days that the count will take place, but let's say you're doing the count on Friday. Well, and when you encounter someone on Friday, you will ask them where did they sleep 4 nights ago, because remember the reference date will be Tuesday. In fact, this case is Tuesday, January the 22nd. So you'd ask them where they sleep on that Tuesday, okay? And keep in mind that that's why we call it the point in time, because we want to be able to reference people in that particular time period and reference date. So even though you're going out there and counting multiple days, you're referring back to that particular time period. Somebody wanted to speak up. Okay. So that's why we're counting late, because we want to make sure we're making adequate measures towards protecting people in COVID, and because we want to make sure we leverage all our resources and have enough time to prepare. Next, how do we conduct the unsheltered PIT count? We do that through brief interviews. And we're going to talk more about that right quick in the next section. But also understand that we do use observation if necessary, if an interview is not possible. But here, what we're going to do is go ahead and segue into the next part of the presentation, which talks about your role in the count. But keep in mind, this is achieved by when we see a person, we don't just see a person and say, okay, we counted. We see a person and we ask them a series of questions, and that series of questions comes through surveys, and let's talk about what that is. And so your role in the PIT count is served by doing the survey forms with those who could possibly qualify as homelessness as you encounter them in your community. And so again, in this section, we're going to look at the survey introduction, how to. We're going to talk about where to go to count and who to survey a count. We got a little bit of a brief overview of that, but now we're going to move into very specific territory. So first thing you have to know that there are 3 possible forms. In this case, three possible forms that could be used to encounter and serve those to be able to count people who are homeless. And here they are. Number 1, there is an unsheltered survey form. Keep in mind, this is for people or households who are willing and able to answer the survey questions. Keep in mind, this is for those who are in a place not meant for human habitation, car, park, bench, sleeping in a shed, things like that, abandoned buildings. This is where this particular survey applies. Next, there is a youth survey form. However, for the app that we're using, we're not going to be using that particular form on this app, because if we do have, for those who qualify as homeless youth, we will have make accommodations to make sure that those are counted, but you don't have to necessarily make headway to count that. However, the third form will be the observation form, and the observation form is for, in a nutshell, those you encounter who let's say you try to interview them, but then they just say, I don't want to talk anymore. I refuse. I don't want to talk anymore. Well, then you can make an observation. Now, keep in mind, the 2 main things you'll be using in our particular account will be the unsheltered survey form and the observation form. But now keep in mind that observations hopefully should be very rare. We should be able to see those. We should be able to mostly interview people on the street or in that community and be able to answer with the unsheltered survey form. Observation should be done on the fact of refusal. right? Or in the fact of there is some significant danger or reason why you cannot count this person. But we're going to talk about what it means to do observations and how to avoid making assumptions when doing observations as well. So to do this, for us to be able to do the surveys, it's going to require us, our COC does it through a mobile app. And so the mobile app that we use to do our point in time count is called Counting Us. It was developed by a group out of Massachusetts called Simtech Mobile Solutions. And this group has given us and afforded us the way to be able to graphically pinpoint where we are taking our surveys, be able to log in information about the surveys and submit them via phone data. There's also a way that even if you're in a bad area, let's say that you're in an area where you lack cell service or data service. Well, the app even has a feature where you can still survey people, but when you get back into Wi-Fi range, or when you get back into good cellular range, you can then take the forms that you have saved within the app and then submit them afterwards, even if you can't submit them you can't submit them while you're on the go. So again, this app is available in the App Store and the Google Play Store. So if you just go and search Counting Us, you should see that logo. I gave you plenty of screenshot pictures so that you can see what it looks like. So feel free to download that mobile app. And if you just want to kind of play with it to get the feel of it, even after our training is over, you can go in, register. You can register with the app, and and then you can also go in and put the key in. That's the setup key demo, DEMO, and you can kind of get the feel of what it means to actually do a survey mobily. Keep in mind that putting in the setup key demo does not access our particular count, but it basically gives you a sample count that you can submit random dummy data to, so to speak. You can just kind of make up people just so you can see what it means to submit a person, what it looks like in real time. So feel free to take a snapshot of that QR code, or if you just go on your mobile phone and search the Google Play or app or the Apple App Store or the iOS App Store, and you'll find this app there within. Moving forward, one of the first forms that you're going to encounter when you download and access the app, in one of the forms we're going to talk about today, is the general PIT count survey form. In this case, it will be the unsheltered survey. If you see my red bar appear around the particular category in the app, you see it right there. We always try to start with this form because if we need to make special considerations in other regards, we will. However, most of the people that you're going to interview are going to fall in this category. And keep in mind that there may be a chance where you may interview an individual, which is easy to go through the app and do such. But if you are recording a family, there is a functionality in the app where it'll ask you, are you recording an individual or a household? And if you say household, then the question becomes, how many people will be in that household? Now keep in mind, the household in this case could be, let's say this group of people are huddled together and consider themselves a family. Well, then you can record that in the app. However, if it's just several individuals, you can record them individually as needed. But we want one complete survey per household. So if you have to add even the kids on, if there are homeless children within that community, you can also use the app to add them as well. Step one, when you download the app and when you approach and engage, we want to make sure that we approach the person and we introduce ourselves. I mean, you see some sample verbiage in the white on the side of my presentation, and you want to approach them with a general introduction, and you want to ask them if they have a few minutes to answer some questions. And so keep in mind here that, when you ask these questions, remember that these people are outside. They could be dealing with an active addiction, could be dealing with mental health concerns possibly, or significant trauma. So one thing you don't want to do, you don't want to try to startle people, or you don't want to try to do things that would cause them to feel alarmed or over alert. All right. And so you want to maintain good eye contact, and you want to have an open stance. Basically, you want to look like you're approachable. All right. And you want to speak slowly and be polite, and don't shout. And so what you see here is a little bit of sample language. It says, hi, my name is, insert your name. And we're out trying to talk to people or folks about, who might not have a safe place to sleep tonight. Do you have a safe place to sleep tonight? Do you know where I can find some people around here who don't? So you want to keep it kind of general. Sometimes you like to throw in there that we're taking this survey we're doing this survey to conduct conduct an assessment on services and needs for our local area, and then you can launch into the, do you have a safe place to sleep tonight? And if so, where is it? Because that's where you're going to gauge what type of situation they're in, whether they are actually homeless or don't meet the homeless criteria of the homeless definition. But keep in mind, you want to keep that relaxed, and you want to make things comfortable for the person, because we know that sometimes talking to someone cold on the street can feel kind of awkward, but you want to make them as comfortable as possible as you try to get the information that we need. Keep in mind that as you're doing this, again, you explain why you're there. You explain, and the volunteer need to know that if you, like, for instance, if there are any incentives they're going to be offered, like let's say if the coalition provides any incentives, they're going to give you direction on how to handle those. But you need to also remember that you're asking for their consent to answer questions. So that's one thing you want to make sure that you get across, is that, do you have time to answer questions? If they refuse, and you observe that, there are many things that would say that their situation may be homeless, that they may be in a homeless situation, well, then that's a time where you can switch over and do an observation. And we'll talk more about what an observation should look like. But you want to make sure that if they refuse, you don't force them. You just say, okay, well, thank you I appreciate your time. I'm sorry to bother you, whatever the case may be. But you want to get across that, what they're answering, they don't have to. I mean, we would love for them to answer. And most people, by and large, will probably be comfortable, will probably answer you to a certain degree. But there may be other people who may, as you start asking questions, they may refuse to answer certain questions. Like they may refuse to tell you, how old they are, what their date of birth is, or what year, whatever the case may be. But make sure you're getting consent for all the things. I mean, make sure you get consent in the beginning before you launch into the survey on your mobile app. Another step in this process is to make sure you go through each question on the form. Remember, again, they have the right not to answer all the questions. However, we do encourage them to answer all the questions. And at the end of the app, at the end of the survey in the app, as you're stepping through all the questions, what you'll notice that there'll be a note section at the very bottom of at the very bottom of that particular survey form. And that's a chance for you to add other details that may be pertinent to understanding who they are, what their situation is, or what type of services they need. Because again, this is all being recorded into our point in time count mobile command center. So as you send that data, we'll get to see it in real time. We'll get to see the pinpoints where people are located, but we'll also get to see notes and information that you put in on them, and also you can use the app to contact us if need be as well. But you want to be able to add any notes in that particular point that may be helpful. Any questions? I feel like I know I'm going through it, a little briskly, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page. Is everybody good? Anybody have any questions? Okay. Forward. When you close the interview, after you've done the interview, you want to close that interview. You want to thank the person for their time, of course. You want to refer them to any services or resources that they may have asked about. And you may want to, if you have it, you may want to offer a resource or contact card if you have it, and give them the incentive should you have one that you're passing on behalf of the coalition in the count. So make sure that as you're doing it, you thank them for their time. And one thing we'll talk about later is don't make any promises that you can't keep. Okay. So, I mean, maybe you want to be able to follow up with a person and connect them to something, but try not to make promises for things you can't, with things you may not be able to do. Also, again, record what you heard and observed. That's towards the end of the survey before you submit. So you should be able to put in your notes, as you walk away, some observations. Maybe they say something about themselves that seems incongruent. Like maybe they'll say, hey, well, now I have a house, I live over here. Well, then you may look at their disposition and see that, it seems incongruent to the fact that they may have a place that they go, or they say, this is my home. And they say, well, they said they had a home, but it happens to be outside of this building or something like that. You want to make sure that you're taking note of disposition as well as if there's any incongruency in their answers. Make sure you record those details, because that could be a key to helping us establish if they're truly homeless or not, or what type of services they may need upon the way. The second form that we talked about using was the observation form. And when you look at the app, or you see the picture there, you see, I'm going to put this all on the screen, but you'll see the red line there as it's marked around the observational tally. You only use this when you're unable to complete a survey with someone. All right, we shouldn't launch into that. We shouldn't look at a person from across the way and launch into the observation. We should be trying to get as much detail as possible, and making things that are identifiable include, so that we can figure out their housing status. So make sure you're very, as thorough as you can be. We understand that interaction sometimes can be brief, but you want to try to get as much information as you can in. Also, you want to make sure you follow the same protocol you use for the interviews that I mentioned for the unsheltered interview. And you want to be careful about, you want to be careful about doing things, for instance, like you don't want to wake anybody up. If they're sleeping on the street, you don't want to wake them up. We want to do that as a safety precaution. We don't want anybody to startle someone and something happen. So we want you to be safe, but we also want to try to gain as much information as we possibly can. And so when we say that, here's what we mean. We're meaning, what is the person wearing? What does a person look like? Is there something significant? Like, do they have long gray hair? Are they, white or black? What is their age range or such? We want to make sure that we try to get some good idea of who they, of what they look like and who they could be, because that could be significant enough as we go back out to locate them for services. Maybe something that would be helpful for us to know as we engage them in future interactions. Also, you may want to say, including your observational notes in the app, of course, why you were unable to complete the survey. Maybe it's because you were doing it and they refused to finish. Maybe it's because they just outright thought, something was wrong and they just walked away from, whatever the case may be. But be sure you are detailed as you can be in regards to your note keeping. Another thing you can think about is where to go during the PIT count. Now, in this case, this will be something that will be reported to you and helped you. Will be giving you resources through the Pine Belt Coalition on Homelessness. They are very, although you may see a lot of homelessness throughout your community as you're going through traveling through Hattiesburg, they will have a significant lead on where encampments are. And give you safety notes as well as a plan on where you are going to count and and where you're going to count. But understand that, and this, of course, is a picture of Hattiesburg broken into its various wards. And so when we think about where to go to count, again, I want to make mention that we are focusing on the unsheltered count in this regard. So the place where you'll more than likely find people, although your coalition will probably have a good idea of where you can find those who are homeless. There are outdoor public spaces like parks and park benches and encampments and parked cars. But there are also places like indoor places like 24-hour businesses, including grocery stores, restaurants, Walmart, places of that nature. And then also, feel free to ask folks that you see out and about if they've noticed any people who may be homeless anywhere in the area. A lot of times employers know there are people who may be around their business or in their community. There may even be law enforcement who may be able to point in those directions as well. And as well, you may feel free to ask those you interview. Maybe you interview one homeless person, you say, is there anyone else around? Is there anyone else who who may be homeless that we can connect with to ask these questions as well? And so hopefully it gives you a lead to other people whom you may be able to interview. Now, who to interview? It's not always possible to determine if someone is experiencing homelessness based solely on how they look. That goes into a very good point. We don't make assumptions. Of course, if you make an assumption in some way that you're approaching people. However, we want to be clear that we may ask the question, but we want to make sure that we're listening for that answer, because sometimes there are people who you may think are, and maybe they're not. But then there are others who may clearly look like, and they may say they're not, but there may be some other underlying reason why they're saying that. So consider this. Consider these questions. Where do you see the person? Like, are they out in the woods? Are they near convenience? Are they begging? Or, are they panhandling? Are they, so again, what are they doing? Where do you see the person? What are they doing? And what time is it? So if you see somebody out really late, and they're just saying, oh no, we're just walking from the store, but yet you can see that they're maybe carrying they may be pushing a shopping cart and they're headed towards a trail in the woods. It may be viable to look and know that that person may be, there's a possibility that this person may be homeless, and it may be someone who may need to be surveyed. But again, go by the definition of homelessness, because again, people in these particular, in those particular places we define, places not meant for human habitation, may be homeless. But be sure to ask the question, maybe be sure to ask questions with detail so that you can truly distinguish whether or not continuing the survey is appropriate or not. Also, again, making pitfalls, don't make assumptions. One of the best practices is you can approach people that you see, but you can also use soft, non-confrontational introduction as an easy reverse course. That's easy to reverse course. So even if you make a mistake, you can go back and just walk away like, oh, I'm sorry, my mistake. Or you can say, oh, I apologize. But do you know anyone in this area who may fit that description, who may lack a place where they sleep at night? Those are things you can bring up to kind of help you reverse course. And there's more training outside this. This is an overview, but there is more training outside this, and that is located at mute.wordpress.com. I just want to give you kind of a brief overview. Moving on, should we wake someone up when they're sleeping? No. If there's somebody who's sleeping and they look like as if they're homeless, be sure to use the observational form in the app, because again, you don't, for your own safety and for their safety as well, you don't want to wake up somebody who's sleeping. You don't know if it may startle them or whatever may happen. Again, we're concerned about your safety. And so just as a quick reminder, we want to make sure that you don't go counting alone. You go with at least one other person. In this case, I would suggest, and I know the Palm Belt will assist you in this, but you're going to go as groups. Again, keep conversation appropriate and be at appropriate distances. Maintain awareness of the space around you. Try to remain standing. Stay in places that things are visible. Like even if you're in an alleyway, make sure you're in a place where you have easy access out, or you're able to be aware of your surroundings. But again, we want to prioritize safety, and of course, we want to make sure that people are being safe in the consideration of people not getting COVID-19. I will say, I know for sure that the Palm Belt Coalition on Homelessness will be providing masks and sanitizer in this effort for you to count your local community. So keep that in mind as well as before you go out and count. And so the next thing we want to talk about really quickly is survey do's and don'ts. I've kind of touched on them, but I'm going to quickly go through some of those do's and don'ts that are very important for you to know as you're out in the field. Number one, do get consent before asking PIT count survey questions. It's something we mentioned early on when we talked about what it meant to actually approach someone, engage someone in a survey. Do remember that you may be entering someone's personal private space. So although you may be outside, let's say you're out and you're in the woods in an encampment. Well, keep in mind that this is considered their home. And so we don't want to enter we want to be cognizant of who we are, and that is their space. And we want to treat this as if this is their own private space. We want to respect that. Also, you do have a conversation with people that you interview. So you don't want to just simply ask questions. You want to kind of start off in a conversational way and lead into the survey. And you also want to respect people's time. At best, it will take you roughly somewhere in the range of 5 minutes, probably, or let's say 3 to 5 minutes, maybe, or 5 to 7 minutes to interview a person. But also do respect their time. If they stop and say, "Hey, I gotta go," respect that time. Things you don't do. You don't take personal photos of or with the people you survey. You don't ask questions in a way that assumes you know the answer. Like for instance, let's say that you're out and let's say you're engaging with someone. So you don't ask, like you will ask, which gender do you identify as? Versus you don't say you're male, right? Or you're female, right? You don't make that assumption. You ask them what they identify as rather than assuming such. You don't insert yourself in that person's story, meaning although you may have an experience, remember this is about you capturing their story, okay? Don't force people to answer questions they don't want to answer. If they don't want to answer, again, it's their right not to answer the question. And lastly, again, don't ever make promises that you can't deliver, okay? You may go out there, you may be surveying, and you may recognize that this person has a need, and maybe you do know how to connect them. Oh, you probably can connect with your local, keep in mind that you are in partnership with the local homeless coalition, so maybe a chance to go and connect with them, ask them if they know of the person, and see if they are able to offer a resource should they not know who this person is or that they're not being actively engaged in service already with an agency, whether across the state or local. Any questions as I go into the home stretch? Okay, well, now let's talk quickly about logistics, how to volunteer, what the schedule looks like. And Kathy Garner, if you're on, I would like for you to step in at that point if you need to add any information concerning the PIT schedule for the Pine Belt, what you need to bring, and if you have any questions at the end. So let's launch into that. So to volunteer for the point in time count, your one-stop shop here is going to this website, mute.wordpress.com. Again, mute.wordpress.com. You should be able to access it mobilely or on your computer browser. But there are really 4 steps, but it can really be completed in 3 steps if you follow along. Number 1, first of all, you got to become a volunteer. To officially become a volunteer for the point in time count, you got to go to mute.wordpress.com. At the very top of the page, you'll see where it says volunteer. Go there, and then when you click the volunteer form, a type form comes up. You fill in the information, telling about yourself, giving emergency contact information, and tell which region you're counting in. In this case, for all of you on this call, of course, that would be the Pine Belt region. And that information will go and connect with your local Pine Belt Regional Homeless Coalition, and they will get that and know that you're registered to count. All right, so that's registration. Number 2, watch the videos. There are videos that tell you about how to engage people, how to survey. Now, keep in mind that these videos are done more specifically with paper surveys. However, of course, our survey is going to be mobily and online, so you're going to be able to still apply the use of the videos as you're connecting and engaging with persons in the field through your with your mobile app. So again, you'll become a volunteer. You go to the next link you'll go to is watch the videos. There's a video page right next to the volunteer link on that page. Go there, watch the videos. And then lastly, to qualify and to certify yourself as a point in time count volunteer, you're gonna have to complete a volunteer orientation quiz. Now, let me give you a quick life hack here. If you go and become a volunteer, register to become a volunteer, and you jump to step number 3, which is take the quiz, the videos that you're supposed to be watching in step 2 are actually embedded in the quiz in step 3. So if you go from step 1, volunteer, to step 3, take the quiz, when you start taking the quiz, you'll see the same exact videos that you would have watched to be able to complete the quiz. And so it's put there in your convenience to watch the video, be able to answer the questions following those videos. So feel free to do that. And lastly, you can go to step number 4, which is in this case is download the point in time count resources. You'll see a resource link next to the take the quiz link, and there you can find helps on how to download the app, little tips and tricks that you can use in the field, what we call cheat sheets, so that you're able to know how to handle yourself in the field that you can go back to as a pocket reference. And that is how you count. So step 1, volunteer. Step 2, watch the videos. Step 3, take the quiz. All this again is at mute.wordpress.com. As far as the PIT schedule, although it's not totally set in stone on my end, Ms. Kathy Garner, Dr. Rostowski, is Kathy by chance on right now? Oh, Dr. Rostowski might not even be on right now, but that's okay. All right, but they'll reach out to you about the local PIT schedule, but just know that the Pine Belt Coalition on Homelessness will communicate that information to you through your local channels, and will give you information that you need to know concerning such. Again, you need to make sure that you connect the key contacts, and that will be done, of course, with the Pine Belt Coalition on Homelessness, who is leading the count. And lastly, what should you bring? As you're going on the count, make sure you bring these items. You want to bring a cell phone or your tablet for mobile survey and your charger. If you want to take snacks, you can take that before departure. You want to make sure you have a vehicle, assuming that you're volunteering to drive, or if you're going with a group, or make sure that you're able to do such. Make sure you're wearing weather appropriate clothing. Also, make sure you're carrying some type of form of ID. And you should also, you may want to bring a backpack or something that you can carry some items in. And for more clothing layers, again, ID. And also bring an energy and compassion and a good set of eyes to be able to reach out and count people as needed. I know that was maybe a lot to take in. However, it's very important. And I think that's kind of it. That's it. That's what it takes to be a volunteer. So with that being said, I'm finished with my presentation, but are there any questions that you may have for me? Anyone? This is the time for you to speak up if need be.
I do have a question.
Sure.
What if we're on the Gulf Coast?
Oh, okay. On the Gulf Coast, you would want to connect with, there's a group in Gulfport called the Open Doors Homeless Coalition. They have the exact same count happening on the same week. In fact, reach out to Open Doors Homeless Coalition, and they should be able to tell you details about their count on the coast.
Okay, thank you. I wrote that down.
In fact, I think it's opendoorshc.com or .org. opendoorshc.com or .org. I can't remember off the top of my head, but if you just look up Open Doors Homeless Coalition, you should be able to ping it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Do you have a general idea of the time frame, even though you don't have the specific times yet? Do you have a general idea?
Yes, more than likely, and this is what's been done in the past, was usually the Pine Belt Coalition on Homeless would meet in one main area. Usually it's been the Salvation Army. I can't say that whether that's the case this year, because they haven't released their total plan, but usually they meet at the Salvation Army let's say 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and then they they distribute, and then they basically go over the plan and say, oh, all right, this group go this way, this group go this way. They may, if they have care packs or incentive packs, they'll pass those out and distribute those at that morning meeting, and then send you on your way. And then afterwards, there's usually you would either probably come back or just make sure that you report to whomever is your count leader, who you counted, where you counted, and maybe give them a general report of what the results were. Keep in mind that all the things that you're putting in the app are going to go to us in real time, so we'll have that stored, but maybe you want to give them a heads up on, man, they said that people were over here, but when we went over there, people weren't there, things like that, just so we're able to adjust our count as needed to be able to account for any discrepancy. Any other questions with that? Does that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Would there be anyone else? Okay, so with that being said, again, step one, go volunteer. Like if you can, after class or whatever the case may be, go to mute.wordpress.com, go volunteer, take the quiz, download the resources so that you're able to begin to help us with the count. And again, if you need to reach out to me, my name is Reginald Glenn. I'm one of the PIT coordinator. I'm one of the point in time count coordinators. I can be reached at rglenn, that's RGLENN at msbos.org. In fact, I'm gonna go back to the first page of the slide where my email is right here. So you can go, you can email me. Also, you'll have local contacts. Of course, you have Dr. Rostowski, who's not on right now, but you can also reach out to Pine Belt Coalition on Homelessness, and they will be able to connect you to me as well. But with that being said, thank you guys for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to have you volunteer very soon and be a part of our count. Thank you.